For those watching this channel, I'm pretty sure that you know by now that I'm a big fan of Mercedes Benz. In fact, the entire channel was built on classic Mercedes Benz cars. But this car right beside me is not a classic Mercedes Benz car. This is a modern Mercedes Benz car. Will it still live up to the expectations of someone like me who are into the traditional old school luxury of Mercedes Benz? This is the 2024 Mercedes Benz C180 Avantgarde, the W206, the latest iteration of the Mercedes Benz C-Class. And in this video, let's see if number one, it will live up to my expectations, and number two, will it live up to the expectations of a regular Mercedes Benz car buyer of today. Let's now explore the exterior of the C180 Avantgarde. As with the C-Classes of the past, it still looks like a baby S-Class. That is why the C-Class started out its life as the baby Benz with the 190 W201. Now, if you look at the front of this, while it is like a smaller version of the S-Class, they did give it some sporty styling. So for example, your grille. You do have a chrome horizontal trim on it, but it has tons of vertical slats. Now, this is definitely inspired by the AMG GTR, which in turn was inspired by the 300 SL race car. If you take a look at your hood too, there's a couple of clean lines on it. You get LED headlights. These are pretty bright too. And over at the side of the vehicle, I want you to take a look at just how massive the C-Class has grown to be. This is about the size of E-Classes of the past. So will that translate to interior space? Well, let's take a look at that later. So in terms of design cues over here, there honestly isn't too much, which again is something that the C-Class has been doing for the past, I don't know how many generations. The only thing that you would really notice here include this very nice chrome strip that runs across your belt line just below your windows, as well as your multi-spoked rims. There's so much spokes on this. And by the way, these are 18 inches big. Now, one thing you do have to watch out for is that the C-Class ground clearance, while it don't have the exact figures, it's a little bit low. So there are times wherein you might scrape this car. So just do some siete on those speed bumps. Now, before I talk about the rear end of the C180, one fun fact: this shares a very similar platform to the S-Class, the W223. Although since it is a modular platform, this is obviously much shorter. Anyway, now here at the back, the trunk, it looks pretty short, which is nice, and it also gives you a very minimalist design over here. There really isn't too much design cues, just like the side. The only thing that kind of stands out here would be your curved tail lamps, but that's about it, as well as your C180 badge. Now, what truly makes this a proper luxury car is even the trunk, that is power operated. So that goes for both ways, both opening and closing it. So if you're extremely lazy, you would love the C180. Now, boot space inside here is honestly not bad. It's also really square, and you can even fold down those seats 60/40. But if you check under the false floor, you will not find any sort of spare tire or tire repair kit. That's because the C180 is equipped with run flat tires. Now, one additional optional extra that you would get when you buy a C180 is this. It is an organizer that can fold down and collapse. This comes in handy, and this is a feature that I really love. This is an option that I really love with Mercedeses from multiple generations. Now for the powertrain, so what you have for the C180 is a 1.8 liter, wait, hold on. Mercedes-Benz doesn't do that anymore. That designation, in fact, doesn't equal your displacement, right? So what you have here instead is a 1.5 liter turbocharged gasoline engine made into a 48 volt mild hybrid system. Your total output right here is 170 horsepower and 250 Newton meters of torque. But you have some sort of an overboost because of that mild hybrid system, which gives you an additional around 20 horsepower. So you can think of this as like 190 horsepower. Honestly, not too bad, but not the quickest either. 0 to 100 time is claimed to be at around 8.6 seconds. And for your transmission, you get a 9G-tronic, a 9-speed automatic transmission. But now what about fuel economy? Well, in the city, it's honestly pretty abysmal. You can only do around 5.6 kilometers per liter. But don't forget, this car, these German cars were made for the highway, for the German Autobahn. That's why when you take this car over to the highway, you get a really impressive 19.2 kilometers per liter. Now for the interior of the C180 Avantgarde, first we do have to check the door thud. And that sounds really good. Remember, this whole door thud check thing, this all started off from classic Mercedes cars, and that's why I still keep doing it. I just love it. And this C180 doesn't disappoint. Now, what could disappoint some people is the interior of the C180. For a regular car buyer, this is excellent, but for us coming from, classical Mercedes Benzes, it's very different. I wouldn't say it's not nice, it's just very different. It's a very modern, it's a very minimalist, clean look. There's almost nothing in here aside from screens, but the screens themselves are really nice though. So what you have here right in front of you is a 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster that's also customizable, and you can even view your navigation, your maps over there, but without traffic information. This center screen though, in a portrait layout, is an 11.9-inch touchscreen that runs the latest version of MBUX, and you even get wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. You'll also find your reverse camera over here, and it is pretty clear too. Now, at first glance, this is a little bit confusing to use, sure, but once you get a hang of it, it is honestly pretty easy to use. The only complaint I have is that you're really lacking any sort of buttons in here. So almost everything in this car is just filled with like these haptic touch-based quote-unquote buttons. Even your volume switch over here, that's also haptic. If you want to go on to your next track when you're listening to audio, for example, you do have to touch that thing on the screen. So yeah, it's slightly distracting when you're driving, but overall, I mean, that really is the direction that a lot of cars are going for nowadays. But at least the steering wheel itself, not only does it look good, but it also feels good. It's not too thick, perfect for a very comfort-oriented car such as this one, and the leather covering on it is pretty nice to hold too. Oh, also, it is power adjustable, tilt and telescoping. And also, speaking of power adjustments, if you look at here on the side, you get extra haptic buttons for your seat control. So you get powered seats, not only for the driver's side, but also for the passenger side. And you get 3 settings of memory each too. That is really good. Now, again, the seats themselves, very ergonomic, great thigh support, great bolsters, the recline and all that, including this movable headrest. It just is so easy to find your perfect driving position, and even long distance driving will not get your body fatigued. Now, there's another cool feature with these seats, which I'll tell you about later on in the driving segment. Anyway, now let's move on to the dashboard design. I'm really a big fan of these like triple air vent layout. It looks really nice, and the air vents themselves too, they feel pretty premium, and they even have ambient lighting over there inside the air vent. That is really cool. Now, there's a couple more places with ambient lighting, including this top part, as well as here on the doors and even your footwells. 64 colors to choose from. Finally, what's slightly unacceptable for Mercedes Benz is the amount of creaking that you will get with the interior. So if you press this part, yeah, you're gonna hear that creak, as well as this part and this part as well. But as long as you're not too anal about those, you'll be absolutely fine, and I'm sure that you'll enjoy the interior of the C180 Avantgarde. Now here for the second row, as usual, we check the door first. Good. Very, very good. So the interior room of the second row of the C-Class, honestly, it has grown so much over the years. This is practically the legroom that you would get with E-Classes of the past. Look at it. I'm only 5'6" short, but like, there's like a solid 8 inches or so of legroom back here. So even if you're like 6 feet tall, no issues whatsoever. The same is true for the headroom. That is pretty good too. I also really love how the seats are super ergonomic. I mean, the thigh support is great. The pre-recline is also excellent. It's really good back here. Now, remember that if you're watching this video from outside the Philippines, what you have to know about these Filipino buyers is that there's a very high chance that even a C-Class would be used as a chauffeur-driven vehicle. So you want to have as much amenities as you can get here at the back. And do you get them? Well, aside from giving you air vents, nice materials on the side, and the same ambient lighting you get in front, unfortunately, you don't get a single charging port. But you can always just open that center console because there is 2 additional USB-C ports in there from the front. Just get a slightly longer wire. Now, you also get this center armrest, which is nice and thick. Feels very firm too. Open it halfway, that is like a phone holder or a credit card holder, but half press it, and it shows you your two cup holders, a very clever system. Just in case you do need to seat a third passenger in here, yes, it is very much doable because the car is also now wider than before, and while you do have a massive transmission tunnel by the center, your footwell is pretty spacious too. So now we drive the Mercedes Benz C180 Avantgarde W206, and I've driven almost every single generation of the Mercedes Benz C-Class since before it was even the C-Class, since it was still the 190e, the baby Benz. And I had a couple of issues with those older C-Classes. You see, they were super comfortable, sure, but you could easily tell that Mercedes-Benz was still somehow trying to compete with BMW in terms of giving it some sort of sporty, great handling characteristics. So it didn't fully give you that extremely comfortable driving experience. Meanwhile, this car, this W206, it's like Mercedes-Benz didn't even try to make it handle great, to make it sporty in any way, which is a good thing because now they have focused so much on comfort, on refinement, on luxury, and you feel every bit of that with this W206. Words cannot describe just how extremely comfortable this car is. It feels more like an E-Class of the past. It just is so good. Not only is it extremely quiet in here, even at Autobahn speeds, but the suspension is also tuned for just softness. It's not soft in a way that it will make you feel a little bit car sick. No, it's not that. It's just, it's not harsh in any way. You can be driving this car at low city speeds with bad roads, with speed bumps. It won't matter. You could also be driving this like right now on the highway at pretty high speeds, and it is still really planted. This car just tracks extremely well on the highway. You can really tell that this was designed for the German Autobahn. Now, with basically noise, vibration, and harshness aside, let's talk about the power. So you only have 170 horsepower in here, right? So with your mild hybrid system, you get an extra boost for around 20 horsepower, 190 horsepower. It really isn't much. This car is not a fast car in any way. It still is okay for your daily driving, but you're not going to be winning any races with this one. But that powertrain combo together with your transmission is just extremely smooth too. There's no jerkiness in any way. It just is good. It just is the perfect drivetrain for a car that is tuned for a relaxing drive. In line with what I said earlier about this car not really handling extremely well, right? I don't really mean that it's a boat to handle. Yes, the car does feel pretty heavy, but when you do turn this into tight bends and you want to do it pretty quickly, it can hold its own weight. It's just not gonna feel like it was designed to be driven around the Nürburgring or anything like that. To make your driving experience even more comfortable, Mercedes-Benz decided to give you super light steering feel, and this is true even when you are driving on the highway. But again, it is still very planted, and just in case you need a little bit extra reassurance, you can always change the drive mode settings to sport mode, and that will tighten up your steering by a lot. And also, if you drive a lot of long distance cruising, you're gonna be happy because there's a setting in here in the infotainment screen. It's called Seat Kinetics, wherein it will move your seat just a little bit, maybe every 10 seconds or so, to prevent any sort of soreness. Think about how people in the hospital, they have to be turned once in a while to prevent bed sores. Yeah, that is about the same idea. It can move your backrest, it can move your thigh support. It is an ingenious way of keeping you energized while you drive long distances with your Mercedes Benz C-Class. Also, just one additional minor complaint I have would be the brakes. Again, you can really tell that this car is designed for the Autobahn, for highway driving, because on the highway, the brakes are actually fine. They're very linear, they're not grabby, but once you get into city speeds, for some reason, it tends to get a little bit grabby, which can kind of like jerk you around, jerk you forward once in a while as you are inside creeping traffic speeds. So how much does the new Mercedes Benz C180 Avantgarde cost? Well, you can have this luxury sedan for 3,990,000 pesos. At the start of this video, we asked two questions. Number one, will it live up to my expectations as a classic Mercedes Benz fan? I would say yes and no. No, in the sense that it feels extremely different from those classic Mercedes cars that I used to drive, but also yes, because in fact it exceeded that, because I came here thinking that this will just be like any other modern car, but it went past that. It just is supremely comfortable, and as I said earlier in the driving segment, This is what I think a C-Class should be. Just pure comfort without really trying too much when it comes to sporty dynamics. Now, for the second question, will this meet the expectations of a regular Mercedes Benz car buyer? I think this is the more important question, and yes, it will definitely meet their expectations because the Mercedes-Benz C-Class, even though it's really dissimilar from the Mercedes-Benzes of the past, it gives you a new sense of luxury. It gives you tons of comfort. It's also pretty stylish. And yeah, just as before, it still looks like a small S-Class, and that is never a bad thing.